Welcome. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Pottstown. I'm the Reverend Kerry Mueller, co-minister here with the Reverend Dave Hunter in our other studio. You are most welcome here, whether you are remotely now, one day back in person, whatever your beliefs, whomever you love, whatever your background, you are welcome. Are there announcements this morning? Yes, Miranda, you need to unmute first.
There we go. Thank you. Two announcements. One is that on Friday evening this week, there'll be a book club meeting at 7:30. So if you want an invitation, just email me or give me a call or something, text me, and I'll send you one. As well, another announcement for the membership committee. We seem to be missing our membership book, the book that people sign when they become members. If anyone knows the whereabouts of that book, we would all love to know. So that's it.
Other announcements? Our opening words are adapted from Angela Herrera. Don't leave your broken heart at the door. Bring it to the altar of life. Don't leave your anger behind. It has high standards and the world needs vision. Bring them with you. And your joy and your passion, bring your loving and your courage and your conviction. Bring your need for healing. Bring your powers to heal. There is work to do, and you have all that you need to do it right here in this virtual space. Mary, if you would light the chalice, we light the chalice this morning for meaning in our lives, for the care of one another, for hope and healing for all. Now, this turns out to be the 60th anniversary of the joining up of the Unitarians and the Universalists to become Unitarian Universalism, that wonderful 10-syllable religion that we share. And a hymn was written for that purpose intentionally. It was number 145 in our gray book, As Tranquil Streams. Carly, would you play it? Thank you. Now for our joys and sorrows. Every life is touched by joy. Every life has its share of sorrows. In this time together, we take a few moments to share those joys and sorrows, our hopes and concerns. If you would like to share, please unmute yourself and share a few words with us. And I will drop a stone into a bowl of water, and the rich ripples will touch every drop of the virtual pool of our community. Is anyone ready to share? Miranda? You need to unmute first.
It's me again. Joy. Some of you know about this already, but yesterday, looking out from my spot here into an ornamental cherry tree, I saw a tree full of cedar waxwings. And if you don't know how beautiful that bird is,
For the cedar waxwings.
Google it.
Well, I'll have a joy. When my Terminex guy got here on Friday, and we saw this flash of blue swooping down on his truck that had parked underneath a silly bird's nest a friend had given me. I thought it was just ornamental. Well, I have a bluebird nest family and right above my driveway, so nobody better park there. And Papa Bluebird let the technician know he was not very happy where he parked, but I am overjoyed that I have actually a bluebird family. And later I will talk with Miranda because I have no clue how to clean this out. There's like I have to take it apart. So maybe you can help me later.
The joy. Um, I think you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay. I have a joy that our house construction is way underway. The landscape in our backyard is totally different now. There was the containment pond, I think, has been built. It's just incredible. My little bit of a concern is that we're just wearing ourselves out here. And John is doing a lot of the work. But yeah, it looks very promising right now. It's all happening.
Great. Anyone else?
I have a joy. Yesterday was my birthday, and I had a fantastic day. Went to the driving range with the kids. Spent some time practicing with my oldest daughter with the drone she gave me for Christmas, and it culminated in a bonfire that Erica surprised me with a number of our vaccinated friends and neighbors coming over to have a little party and a bonfire last night. It was fantastic. Thank you.
Happy post-birthday.
Thank you.
I don't see anyone else. I would like to drop a stone for Matt and Alexa, a couple who I married yesterday in Royersford. Let us remember that we are touched by the cares and the joys of every human being, those we hear about and those that remain unknown to us. The meditation is from Lisa Friedman. Spirit of life and love, we live in a fragmented world that tempts us to despair. We would put it back together piece by piece if it were ours to choose. But sometimes the fragments are enough. In a world of cruelty, there is still power in every act of kindness. In a world of doubt, there is still power in every act of hope. In an age of division, there is still power in every act of unity. May we remember that sometimes the fragments of our meaning that we make are just the right size to hold in our hands. Amen. I believe that our treasurer, Linda Pelle, has made available to you the donate button, either on the link to come here or on our website. And we hear each other into speech. We encourage one another into action. We are a community of memory and hope. We share resources to bless the world. And now the morning offering will be given and received, while Carly plays Blessed Spirit of My Life, number 86. And we thank you for your generosity. Thank you, Carly. For our reading this morning, I have some words of consolation and challenge from Henry Nouwen from his book, Bread for the Journey, which is a lovely day book with short readings for each day. This is for March 11. To listen is very hard because it asks of us so much interior stability that we no longer need to prove ourselves by speeches, arguments, statements, or declarations. True listeners no longer have an inner need to make their presence known. They're free to receive, to welcome, to accept. Listening is much more than allowing another to talk while waiting for a chance to respond. Listening is paying full attention to others and welcoming them into our very beings. The beauty of listening is that those who are listened to start feeling accepted, start taking their words more seriously and discovering their true selves. Listening is a form of spiritual hospitality by which you invite strangers to become friends, to get to know their inner selves more fully, and even to dare to be silent with you. Today's sermon is called Proverbs of Ashes, and this is part 1. I've often said that every bit of education, every experience, every mistake I've ever made, every mess I've made in my life has been useful to me in ministry. Now, as a minister, it often falls to me to be the comforter in times of trouble. Usually I can't fix things for a person. The health crisis, the financial disaster, the mentally ill family member, a crumbling marriage, an automobile accident. There exist experts for these, but they're beyond my ability to solve. It's the minister's job, or the job of the fellow parishioner who is being a pastoral caregiver, not to make it all better, but to be with the person in their pain, to help them weather the emotional and spiritual storm, to hold some of their pain. That's where all my mistakes come in handy. I can't just roll my eyes and shrug my shoulders and say, how did you get into this mess? I have to remember my own messes. But sometimes it's hard, and not just for ministers. When someone else's life falls apart, people just want it to go away. They say, there, and they stop the whirlpool of pain and chaos and suffering. Calm down, be reasonable. This is all in God's plan for you. Stop making me uncomfortable. And all of that is worse than useless. So why is it so tempting? Let me invite you to visit with a Bible character, Job. Job knows all too well. Now, you've probably heard of Job. He's the man who does everything right. He's blameless and upright. He fears God. He shuns evil, and he has everything. He's got a large family, a prosperous ranch, oxen, sheep, camels, a respected position in the community as a philanthropist and a teacher of wisdom. He's got everything. And then one day, like a bolt out of the blue, he loses it all. Wealth, position, children, his own health. This is an absolute catastrophe. One minute he's presiding over a large family. Then there he is, sitting on the ash heap, scratching at his loathsome sores with a potsherd and wondering what hit him and why. After a week of stunned silence, he begins to complain. First, he just wants to die. Then he starts arguing with God. Why have you done this to me, God? I'm an innocent man. What did I do to deserve all this? Well, we know why God has allowed the Satan to turn Job's life upside down. Now, the Satan, by the way, who's popularly known as Satan, is the title, not a name. It's the title of God's quality control agent, a sort of inspector general. So we have read the introductory narrative where we learn that it's all about a wager. The Satan suggests to God that Job is upright and blameless because he has everything. Take it away and see what happens. Now, God is easily baited by this challenge, being at this stage of his development, a sort of thin-skinned tribal desert deity. And God allows Job to be the test case. He is a victim chosen for his very blamelessness, not because he deserved to suffer. So there is Job sitting on the ash heap, and not surprisingly, he is bewildered. From his point of view, his suffering is incomprehensible. These things just aren't supposed to happen to a good, pillar of the community, solid citizen. It isn't right and it isn't fair. And the worst suffering that Job endures is perhaps not his financial loss, not his physical pain, maybe not even the loss of his children. The very worst thing that happens to Job is that his world has been shattered. Everything is upside down, from the top of the world to the top of the ash heap. He has been the loving father of 10 happy children. Now his gruesome appearance frightens little children in the road. He is despised by strangers and patronized by his friends. Nothing makes sense anymore. Job is suffering from a crisis of meaning. Now, Job had been a teacher in the wisdom tradition, and as such, he had lived in an orderly universe. The wisdom tradition was well known all over the ancient Near East, not just among the Hebrews. Followers of wisdom believe that there is a reliable relationship between what a person does and what they get. Be good and prosper. Wisdom is concerned with living decently and well with ethical standards. Evil, sickness, misfortune, people thought of these as punishment for sin. This is called retributive justice, and the accepted system means that the wicked are expected to suffer and the good to prosper. If a person suffers greatly, well, they must have done something wrong to deserve it. Wisdom is a good system under most circumstances. It encourages people to live in an ethical and moderate way. Most people work hard, live right, do all right. It's a very appealing system and very easy to believe in when things are going well, though it doesn't take into account racism or other systematic oppressions. All things being equal, however, it works pretty well. But Job, in his new circumstances, can no longer accept this understanding of the world. The mechanical ledger of good and bad no longer works for him. The lines have always been a little blurred. A wicked person might appear to prosper for a while, but Job experiences a major disconnect between his behavior and his suffering. He is facing a universe suddenly gone chaotic. There is no sense or order to it. Meanwhile, Job's friends come and do the right thing. They come and comfort him. They begin compassionately, sitting in silence, holding some of his pain. But little by little, they become suspicious of him. He no longer fits their model of what happens to a good man. Job's world has dissolved and left him devastated. Unlike Job, however, his friends have a choice about whether to enter the chaos of a world turned upside down. Not surprisingly, they choose to retreat into the safe world they've always known. People have an enormous need to feel that the world makes sense. It's hard to get out of the bed in the morning without the confidence that the universe is a rational, orderly place, that the sun will rise in the east and gravity pull you towards the earth, that hard work will earn you a living, and that loyal children will bury their parents in due course and not the other way around. Job's friends, still living their orderly lives, retain their old, rigid ways of thinking. They have the world down pat. They believe in retributive justice with all their hearts. It has always worked for them. It's helped them. And in the past, it has helped Job to be just and compassionate, wise people. An innocent Job threatens their sense of the universe. He is upsetting them. He won't stay in his pigeonhole. He's being punished. Therefore, he must be guilty. Suffering is meant to be a warning or a lesson or a punishment. It comes from God and it isn't random. If only he has contributed to his own fate, it will be easier for them to keep their world intact, and it will be easier for them to tolerate his suffering. Friend Zophar reminds Job of his former confidence in God and the security of a universe in which God is both just and powerful. That confidence Job had when he was rich and powerful. Friend Bildad reassures Job that it will be all right in the end if Job just gets right with God. Here's how he puts it. If you will seek God and make supplication to the Almighty, if you are pure and upright, surely he will rouse himself for you and restore you to your rightful place. As Job's anger and bitterness grow, his friends cling all the harder to their tidy system. Before long, Job's friends, in order to defend their religion, are accusing him of blasphemy. They speak at length about the fate of the wicked, a dismal fate which is essential to their understanding of retributive justice. They do not at first directly accuse Job of wickedness, but they offer their descriptions of the different fates of the wicked and the wise, and they hint that he should take this to heart. His predicament undermines their faith, and his refusal to accept their advice enrages them. First, he confronts them with the degree of suffering that is outside their experience. Then he rejects the intellectual and spiritual infrastructure that they have accepted all their lives. The chaos that he brings to their world threatens their sense of spiritual safety. Job's friends remind me of a sermon I once heard on the radio as we were traveling, just a fragment of a sermon, actually. The preacher, who was a highly intelligent and articulate evangelist, was making a case for his view of the Bible. He complained that liberals scorn the evangelist's approach as literalistic. But, he said, when you give an airplane pilot a flight manual, you want him to take it literally, don't you? Well, perhaps under most circumstances, it pays to be obsessive about checklists and weather and payload and fuel capacity and such. But what do you want when something has happened that isn't covered by the book? Job's experience is far outside of wisdom's flight manual. You want someone who can rethink the situation and respond flexibly in a creative and imaginative way. So let me offer thanks to Unitarian Universalist layperson Kim Scott for this analysis. You want someone who will not slam into a mountain right in front of your eyes because the computer doesn't know it's there. You certainly want someone who can tell the difference between a book of poetry and a technical manual, and use each in the appropriate manner and in the appropriate conditions. But it's always tempting to follow the rule book obsessively, to assume that the rule book is all that there is. Job's friends act as if they are in possession of the only possible flight manual. They want someone to blame for this catastrophe, someone who isn't like them, so that they can be sure that it won't happen to them also. They choose to rigidly cling to the old ways. Job has no choice. He has to let go of the old thinking, or he will find himself trying to fly a space shuttle with training only for a Piper Cub. The circumstances of his suffering are so extreme that he cannot hold on to the accepted reality. His world is no longer orderly, it is chaotic. The old ideas which seem so obvious to the would-be comforters are seen by Job as mockery. They only add to his torment. The friends begin by hinting, and they go on to raging at Job. They accuse Job of all kinds of wicked acts. They have no evidence except the fact that he's being punished, so he must be guilty. Job harshly rejects the words of wisdom offered by his friends. He says, "Your maxims are proverbs of ashes. Your defenses are defenses of clay." Making meaning is an important part of what it means to be human. If he is going to survive, Job is forced to make his own comfort. He must make some sense of his situation. He must cope first with the crisis of meaning. The late Viktor Frankl, who was a survivor of the Holocaust, who later created the psychotherapeutic school of logotherapy, built his life's work around the idea that the search for meaning is primary, even in dreadful circumstances. His Washington Post obituary quoted him, "We must never forget that we also find meaning in life, even when confronted with a hopeless situation." Richard Schrader in the New York Times wrote that Dr. Frankl astonished the world by reporting that the human spirit had found ways to attain dignity, even in the slime of Auschwitz. He argued that the sort of person a Jewish prisoner became, degraded or honorable, was the result of an inner decision, not the result of camp conditions alone. Job's thought processes lift up for us the challenge of making meaning. We need meaning every day, but we can't start from scratch every day. This is why it is so difficult and painful for Job to come to terms with his suffering. Not only has his physical world been ripped from him, but he has suddenly been forced to abandon his old views of the world. They are proverbs of ashes, defenses of clay. Meaning is gone, and yet he cannot live without meaning. Recognizing patterns, seeking out the thread of continuity, developing and testing hypotheses, these are basic, essential modes of human thought. Where does he turn for a new organizing principle? It is always tempting to impose a familiar meaning on new circumstances, or to accept a loud and insistent meaning from outside ourselves. The desperate demand for simplistic explanation can lead to dangerous extremes of what I call brittle thinking. Daniel Pipes, who writes on conspiracy theory, spoke on NPR, and this was back in 1997. He spoke on the Diane Rehm show, which has since become 1A, nearly a quarter of a century ago. Something untoward happens and people think, well, there must be an explanation. And it's all too easy at this point for someone to suggest, oh yes, it's the fault of those, you name the group to be scapegoated this week. Jews, Muslims, secret societies, the right wing, the left wing, homosexuals, Black folks, straight folks, trans folks, the government, the racial group, an ethnic group, somebody. It's just so much easier to make a simple or hateful explanation. It's the flight manual again. If someone slams into a building deliberately and takes down the building and all its inhabitants and a whole plane load of passengers with him, well, he's not there to punish anymore. And you want someone to blame. And you're tempted to blame anyone who looks like him or shares a religion with him. Every time I examine this subject, the conspiracy theories become more far-fetched and more fiercely defended and more hateful. Fake news that supports our preconceived notions is more palatable than reality-based information that challenges our ideas about the world. What are this week's conspiracies? Lizard people, Illuminati, extraterrestrials, voters? Conspiracy and scapegoating are quick and easy ways of conjuring up an explanation. And in the face of disaster, we crave an explanation, someone to blame, no matter how far-fetched or crazy, no matter what further disaster that explanation may lead us to. Anything to get the world to feel normal again. And normal means here the way I want it to be. The problem with this brittle way of thinking is that it leads to its own chaos and bigotry, to illogic and injustice. The illusory comfort of having someone to blame leads to race hatred and unwarranted military invasions, the shooting of unarmed Black men, and all sorts of wicked and foolish and dangerous and damaging actions. And in that kind of thinking, it just feeds on itself. The desperate need to stick with a rigid structure, a set of rules, an imaginary flight manual, makes it impossible to examine the results with reason and evidence. A person clinging to the proverbs of ashes is afraid of the give and take of civil discourse. They know that the system is like a balloon filled with helium. It may float for a while, but take the tiniest little bite out of it and it will blow up in your face. So just cling to the truth. Shout your slogan, sneer at anyone with a different viewpoint, put your fingers in your ears and la, 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 real loud, anything. Just don't let in a new idea because it threatens your peace of mind. And that brings us to the end of part one. Job on the ash tree heap, beginning to pull himself together enough to be angry with his unhelpful friends. And us, we're hoping it doesn't come to the ash heap for us, praying that we will find a way to patch up a common reality and heal some of the divisions of our world. So I must apologize. This was meant to be half of an original sermon, and it has at least 2 sermons in it. First, that listening kindly is the beginning of wisdom. And secondly, that people really need the world to make sense. And it doesn't even get around to how these things show up in our current communal life, how they might help us to tackle the 4 crises that are still with us: the climate catastrophe, racism, threats to democracy, and this pandemic and its successors. So I invite you to consider these questions yourself until we return to Job another time. We can begin, as always, with integrity and hospitality, kindness and conversation. That first week that Job's friends spent just listening to him, that was the best thing they ever did. Amen, shalom, salam, and blessed be. Our closing hymn is number 348, Guide My Feet. Carly? Thank you, Carly. Now, if Mary will extinguish the chalice, we can repeat our words. You can join with me if you will. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and in our hands until we are together again. And the closing words are from Rebecca Ann Parker. Even when our hearts are broken by our own failure or the failure of others cutting into our lives, even when we have done all we can and life is still broken, there is a universal love that has never broken faith with us and never will. Amen. Rick?